everyone, welcome to Buy Fun with Shruti. So this is the second video or second episode of the playlist Simplified NCERT. Today we're going to deal with the second chapter which falls under chemistry, that is sorting materials into groups. Now this is a chemistry lesson for 6th and 7th as there are common textbooks. We're covering all the lessons, whereas from 8 going further we'll cover only biology lessons. Okay? So let's start talk about objects, right? We have lots of objects around us. We have vast variety of objects, but they all differ. They differ from each other, say in the shapes, say in the colors, and even in their uses. Now, in today's lesson, by the end of the video, you will understand how the materials are different from each other, how they're grouped based on their different properties, and you'll also study about the importance of grouping. So start with grouping. What is grouping or what is classification? Grouping or classification is putting similar objects together. Yes, and you put similar objects together for your convenience of study. Okay, so grouping basically has three important uses. First thing, it makes it very convenient to study about the objects. Second important point, it helps you to understand the properties of these objects properly. And the third thing, it also helps you to understand and absorb the patterns in these properties lines. If you group objects based on their shape, here you can see all the round objects, basically the ball, etc., are grouped under one single group. Now talking about the second group, here you can see buckets, toys and all. What is common in them? They're all made up of plastic. So this is group based on the material they're made up of. Now if we consider about these objects in detail, if we further talk about it in detail, objects can be made up of a single material or many materials together. Say for example, if you see this wooden chair here, it is completely made up of wood. But if you see this pen that I'm holding, this pen has a plastic frame and metal nib, metal base also. Okay, so therefore objects can be made up of single material or more than one material. Now if you ask me, ma'am, how do we choose the material for preparing a particular object? Let me talk about it. Materials for the preparation of an object basically are chosen depending upon the properties, and second important thing, for the purpose for which the object is being used. Right? See, for example, you're preparing a mug. Okay, so the mug must be made up of a solid and it should not get easily wet. Okay, so that's why we mostly use plastic mugs. The thing that you're making a mug use of cloth, there is no sense in that, right? It easily becomes wet. Now so let's discuss about different criteria for sorting the materials. Okay, the first criteria is based on the states of matter. Now what is a state of matter? You all know. Okay, matter is anything that occupies space, has some mass, right? Now based on the state of matter, there are three important classifications: the solids, liquids and gases. Solids, you all know, you've been studying it from your lower classes. Solids, generally the molecules are tightly packed and they have a particular shape, whereas liquids, the molecules have spaces between them and they take the shape of the container, and the gaseous molecules in the gases, the molecules are very far from each other. Okay, let's talk about the classification based on the appearance. Now, appearance of materials differ differ a lot from object to object. If I hold this bangle, you can see it is having the luster. It is shining a little. I hope you all can see that. And if you talk about this cloth, this is very, very soft. And if you talk about this wristwatch, it is little hard to touch, right? And even the color, texture of these materials are very, very different from each other. Okay, so materials can even be sorted based on their appearance. Now, let's talk about the next classification, that is based on the solubility. Now, based on solubility in the water, see, if you mix a substance in water, if it dissolves or disappears completely, then it is called as soluble. Now, sugar or salt are soluble in water. Whereas if you mix some chalk powder in the water, you will find the residue. You can't, dissolve it completely even after stirring for a long time. So such things are called as insoluble substances. Now the fourth classification is, the fourth criteria is based on the metals and non-metals. So metals are basically having some properties. They're generally hard, they're generally lustrous, mostly, generally, especially I'm not saying 100%. There are exceptions for everything. Okay, so metals usually will be hard, will be lustrous. Okay, whereas non-metals generally they'll be soft, and non-metals are brittle, very easily broken. Okay, so say for example, non-metals include coal. Non-metals include coal is brittle, easily broken. It's a non-metallic mineral. Okay, now Let's also talk about last important thing based on the transparency. What is transparency? It is the ability to allow light to pass through. Now you can see a cupboard behind me, and you can see you cannot see what are the things present behind me, right? Behind these doors, because this is not allowing the light to pass through. So based on the ability of a material to allow the light to pass through them, the classification, the materials can be divided into three important types. They are transparent, translucent, and opaque objects. Now let us talk about each of them in detail. Right, students. So now we will talk about each of these properties in detail. Now, materials can be classified basically on their appearance, hardness, solubility, and also buoyancy and transparency. Okay, so these are the 5 different things into which materials can be sorted into. Okay, so first let us talk about appearance. Appearance, as I told you, materials can be either lustrous or non-lustrous. If they are lustrous, that means they are usually shiny, and mostly metals are lustrous, and iron, copper, aluminium are some of the metals which can be taken as examples. Talking about non-lustrous substances, they are not usually shiny, and they are, as I told you, they're brittle. Say for example, wood. Coal is a metallic mineral, non-metallic mineral, and they do not generally appear shiny. Now let's talk about the second criteria, that is hardness, or property, that is hardness. Now if you compress or scratch a surface of any object, if it is getting compressed easily or if it is getting scratched easily, that means that substance is a soft material. Okay, say for example, chalk can be easily broken, scratched, compressed. Candle also falls under the same category, but iron, stones, hard stones, they are very difficult to compress them, right? Normally using your bare hands. So these materials generally fall under the hard category. Okay, now let us talk about the third property, that is solubility. Now, taking water as a solvent, if the substances are dissolving in water or completely disappearing after mixing them, then we call such substances as soluble substances. For example, salt is soluble in water. Now, insoluble substances do not dissolve or disappear even after stirring. Say, for example, the chalk powder, sand, etc. These are insoluble in water. Now, talking about the fourth property, that is buoyancy. Now, buoyancy is if you're putting any object in a fluid, okay? There is an upward force applied by the fluid on the object, okay? So, say for example, you're putting a leaf in water. Now the upward force exerted by the water on the leaf is called as buoyancy. Okay, so some objects or some materials, they float on water, and some of them sink into the water. It depends upon density is like the amount of particles present per unit area. Okay, we'll study about it in higher classes. Based on the density, they either float or sink. Okay, so the last category of on based on which materials are sorted is transparency. As I already told you earlier, if an object, it is the ability of an object to transmit light through them. Now if you take a glass or a polythene paper, not a polythene paper, think you're taking a glass. Okay, if you see through the glass, you can really observe what is on the other side of the glass, right? Because it allows the because it really allows the light to pass through it. Okay, such materials are called transparent objects, and translucent things are like oily paper or a butter paper, right? They allow the light to pass through them, but only partially, not completely. So you don't have a clear picture of what is on the other side, but you can see it in a blurry way, right? So this is called translucent property. Now, what are opaque objects? Wood and all, you can't see what is on the other side of it because they does not allow light to pass through them, right? So these are called as transparent, translucent, and opaque objects with examples. Now, students, going towards the end of this video, we'll talk about some extra points. See, mostly if you're purchasing a new metal, say for example, you purchased gold, and in initial days in the shop, it will be very lustrous, okay, it will be very shiny, but you use it every day. Due to the action of water, moisture, air, the metal tends to become dull, okay. It requires polish to make it shine again, okay. So freshly cut surfaces are generally more lustrous and shiny, but due to over the time, what will happen, they tend to become dull, but it just requires a little polish. Now, talking about the importance of grouping, once we'll revise this, grouping is done for our convenience to study, and we'll study the properties easily if the materials are grouped, and we can also observe the patterns in these properties when similar objects are grouped together. Okay. There was one activity in the textbook asking about the solubility of the following following material. So oils generally beat whatever oil, it is insoluble in water and the oil droplets float on water. Okay, vinegar and lemon juice are soluble in water, they mix very well in water, but kerosene is insoluble in water. So students, that's all for today, and make sure that you're downloading the Telegram channel. Please, downloading the Telegram app. Please join our channel. You're getting the free PDF of this lesson which I've used in this video, and you get a free PDF of handwritten notes for every video that I'm going to upload in this series. Okay, so the channel link is posted in the comment box, and please feel free to drop your suggestions and feedbacks in the comment box as well. Thank you. Have a good day.